Hey there, everybody. This is Dan Gandee, team leader of the Operative Group here in the beautiful west coast of Eugene, Oregon. And today's video is the #1 tip when downsizing is starting with the money. But before we bounce into it, please like, subscribe, please comment below with any questions you have about downsizing, relocation, investments, probate. We're here to be a resource. And in the Operative Group, we're all about highly specialized advisory and making sure that people are making the best decisions possible with real estate. Now, let's dig into it. The #1 tip I can give anybody is starting with the money when downsizing. And what I really mean by this, whether you're financing transactions or you're selling and you're going to be buying with cash, you need to figure out how much money or pre-approval wiggle room you have to make the purchase. Now, I want to talk about a few options. When you're selling your home and moving into a smaller and cheaper home or less expensive home, doesn't have to be so much cheaper, you need to really know what your budget is. And that budget starts with having a conversation and running a comparative market analysis that leads to a net to seller analysis. Yes, I just said a comparative market analysis, which is going to run comps of your property, then a net to seller analysis that's going to subtract your current mortgage debt service that you have on your property minus realtor fees and closing costs to give us a ballpark number of how much equity you will have pre-tax. That equity, if you're going to be financing into a smaller home, needs to be provided to the lender so that he can run some numbers or she can run some numbers based upon the down payment that you anticipate having in order to purchase the less expensive property. I don't know how many times I get a call, somebody says, Dan, I want to find the most perfect house, then we'll sell our house. And we'll talk about contingencies and timing of everything, but it starts with the money, guys. We really want to get that net to seller analysis completed. We want to be able to connect you with a lender so that they can run the numbers so that we know what our purchasing power is. We know what payment you're going to be looking at, what price range you're going to be looking at, what type of loan you're going to be using so that we can start cross-referencing the MLS and making a transition with the most strategic step-by-step process possible. Now, if you're selling your home and you're going to be using cash to purchase your next purchase, we still need to know how much that equity is, so a net to seller analysis is going to be relevant. It's not going to be as heavy or financial interrogation that a pre-approval process will be, but we do need to know what that cash position will be so that we can set up a search. Now, I want to talk about understanding your equity position and having a range. A lot of people are really, really tight with their numbers. And what I mean by that is I go to meet with a seller and they think they have $350 or $450 because Zillow said their house is worth X amount of dollars. Now, that's why you have a professional come in who runs a pricing matrix, runs a comparative market analysis, looks at automated valuation models, and looks at what is out there retail facing, what you see as you Google search your address, and comparing those numbers to refine that to a price per square foot that makes sense. So follow me here. If you use numbers and don't enlist the professional expertise of an appraiser or a real estate broker, you're gonna put yourself in a situation where even if you're selling and buying with cash, you may cut yourself short and you may not actually know what you're being able to potentially afford. So having the right people on your team, having them really understand your plan, your timeline, and then getting that comparative market analysis, the pricing matrix, that's what we run at the Operative Group, and then creating a net to seller analysis. And even going one step further, we can enlist the help of an escrow company or a title company to give us a ballpark estimate of total closing costs based upon the sale anticipated price that they may go into contract for. So that being said, I want to talk about, now that you've kind of understand what your equity position is in your property, now we want to talk about the timing of everything. And I said the #1 tip in this is show me the money, start with the money, know what you can afford. It's because the timing of the market is critical. If you want to make a move in the next 30, 60, 90 days, it may not be counterintuitive to not use a loan or do use a loan. So there's a lot of different factors that we have to play into part, including what the interest rate currently is and also what the market is doing. Are we seeing multiple offers in that competitive price point when you're downsizing into? Now, that's why we start with the money, because if the market and the pre-approval is not possible, then we need to time up the sale of your property based upon logically looking at what we can afford and what the velocity of the downsizing replacement property is. What most people don't understand is that that entry level 2 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, follow me for a second, is the most competitive price point. Why? We have VA, FHA, USDA, conventional, and cash purchasers, and first-time home buyers all competing for those homes. They're entry level, and that's typically a lot of what people are downsizing into. So we need to know what that money position is going to be. We're not saying it to get into your personal information. We're not saying it because we're greedy. We need to know this because we can't set up a search and look in the areas and make a real concrete plan that's going to make sense to where the current market is. Now, I want to talk about listing your property with contingencies. One of my most strategic things that I try to tell people is selling your property with a contingency, the seller to find replacement property, is the smartest, most protective way of making sure that you don't accept an offer on your house and then you're homeless or moving in with brother or sister. So there are a few different ways we navigate those processes, one of which is putting a listing out there, sale contingent upon seller finding a replacement property. If a buyer is interested in that property, they're most likely going to wait as you go into contract and find a replacement property that's going to work for your downsizing move. A lot of people, I don't know what it is, but a lot of sellers think that like if they do that, they're putting themselves or their listing at a not favorable position. And I think the real estate agent market has done that because they want a fast sale. They don't want any contingencies. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It needs to make sense for what your plan is. It needs to make sense to what you ultimately need to do so that you can protect yourself. Another thing we do is we write with rent backs in the specific contract. And what I mean by that is if we put in the private mark, seller needs a 2-week or a 3-week rent back, we're telling the buyer preemptively that if you're gonna write an offer on this house, we need a couple weeks after closing in order to suffice maybe a 30-day close if we are 1 to 2 weeks into the current transaction. And what I really mean by all of this, guys, and follow me here, is that you can't just sell your property and then think about what you're gonna do next after the fact that you go into contract. You have to have a very clear blueprint of how you're gonna operate and making sure that we're writing offers with rent backs, we're writing offers with contingencies, we're making sure that we're advertising listings with the right contingencies in place. All of that's important, but it's not as important as that money that we talked about and that equity position and getting that net to seller analysis. Now, all of that being said, there's way more to unpack, but the number one thing that you need to do if you're downsizing your property, whether you're gonna sell your property and move into a rental, whether you're gonna sell your property, move into a manufactured home, whether you're gonna sell your property and move into a fifth wheel, whether you're gonna sell your property and move into a smaller home, whether you're gonna sell your property and move into a condo or a townhouse or a yurt or whatever, is make sure that you're taking the advice of somebody who has helped countless people downsize and making that process as easy as possible. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt when downsizing, especially when you have an emotional attachment to the property or real estate. You've grown up there, you've had kids there, whatever it is. We're making sure that we're giving you the best advice possible so that you know the blueprint. At the Operative Group, we have a checklist and we walk you through every step along the way. And we also create a plan during that initial consultation so that we can draw the right path for you in downsizing. Thanks so much for watching this video. Stay tuned to the next one, and thanks again.